Years ago, my ex-wife Angela, who cheated on me and abandoned our family, unexpectedly showed up at my door. She was accompanied by another man's child and wanted us to be a family again. Shocked and bewildered, I responded by slamming the door in her face. To provide some background, Angela, now 36, and I, a 37-year-old man, first crossed paths in our mid-20s while working at the same firm. After a 2-year relationship, we decided to marry. Our union was blessed with 2 daughters, ages 9 and 7. The second pregnancy came as a surprise, and while Angela was not pleased about it, she chose not to terminate it, even after I reassured her that it was entirely her decision. Initially, our life together was filled with love and joy following the birth of our first daughter. However, things took a turn after Angela became pregnant with our second child. She started exhibiting mood swings, irritability, and a tendency to pick fights with me or our eldest daughter. I attributed her behavior to hormonal changes, believing it was a temporary phase related to pregnancy. As time went on, the situation did not improve. My daughter and I learned to tread carefully around Angela. Even though she was meant to be a stay-at-home mom, having left her job after our first child was born, she was no longer fulfilling her responsibilities. We had to hire a housekeeper because Angela claimed she was too exhausted to manage the household and care for our children. I reluctantly agreed to this arrangement, even though it stretched our budget, as I did not want to add to her stress during pregnancy. I assumed that once our second daughter arrived, Angela would soon return to her household duties. I always contributed as much as I could around the house after work, despite my own fatigue. However, months passed, and Angela showed no signs of getting back to her usual routine. She remained disengaged, often sitting in front of the television rather than interacting with our daughters. Instead of spending time with them, she would pay our neighbor to take them out to the park occasionally. Feeling resentful was natural, as I was working hard to support our family while she did not even perform basic tasks at home. The ongoing expense of a housekeeper, alongside my other financial obligations, made it difficult for me to save for our daughters' futures. After nearly 6 months since the birth of our youngest, I realized a conversation with Angela was necessary. I understood that this would be a tough discussion, so I arranged for my parents to watch our daughters for a day. When the day finally came, I sat down with Angela. I approached the conversation gently, acknowledging her exhaustion after 2 pregnancies, but expressed my need for her assistance. I explained that the cost of having a housekeeper was becoming unmanageable. I requested that she help by taking on some household chores so we could cut down on expenses and save money for our children's future. Unfortunately, Angela immediately dismissed my proposal. She said she was too busy watching the children to do any housework. This refusal left me feeling frustrated and hopeless, as I struggled to balance my job and all the responsibilities at home. I knew that this situation could not continue indefinitely. Watching the children take on any of the responsibilities around the house made me realize that I had to step up my game as well. I knew that I needed to earn more money instead of making excuses or pointing fingers at my spouse for our financial struggles. I tried to explain that I was already doing my best to contribute, but it was equally important for her to do her part if we wanted our marriage to succeed. During our discussion, I pointed out that she wasn't really caring for the kids as she should. It appeared to me that she often let them sit with her for hours, glued to the television as she watched what I considered low-quality reality shows. This observation was something our housekeeper had casually mentioned to me in the past. When I brought this up, I quickly realized it was a major misstep. My wife exploded with anger, accusing me of spying on her through the housekeeper. She launched into a tirade, declaring that she wouldn't tolerate my behavior any longer. She felt that I was pushing her around, making her shoulder all the household responsibilities while I sat at my desk for a few hours each day. She went on to say that our financial issues were my fault, emphasizing that I couldn't afford a housekeeper and shaming me for needing to ask her for help, as I was supposed to be the man of the house. Her argument seemed illogical to me, as if she was grasping for justifications to avoid addressing her lack of contributions. I had expectations, and it felt unreasonable for her to dismiss the idea that she should pitch in. The conversation escalated into a terrible fight where she called me a loser who could not afford to be with someone like her. In the heat of the moment, I shot back, labeling her a lazy cow who had already failed to be a good mother, pointing out how scared our eldest daughter was of her. My words struck a nerve, and in a fit of rage, she shoved me hard. I lost my balance and fell backward onto the coffee table, shattering the glass surface and injuring myself in the process. I had to be taken to the emergency room, and throughout the ordeal, she kept apologizing and crying. Thankfully, my injuries were minor, primarily affecting my back, but the incident made me question my trust in Angela. I felt a need to protect our children, so I told her she had to move out. I didn't feel safe with her around the kids, fearing she might lose her temper again and potentially hurt them. I arranged for my parents to take care of our daughters until we figured things out with Angela. She protested for a week, promising that it wouldn't happen again, but my trust was shattered. At one point, I nearly filed for divorce. However, she pleaded for another chance. By the end of that week, we reached an agreement. She would stay with her parents for a while and pursue therapy. Only after receiving a clean bill of mental health from a professional would she be allowed to move back home. It was clear to me that something deeper was wrong with her, as content individuals do not behave in such a manner. Despite everything, I wanted my daughters to have their mother in their lives, so I decided against immediate divorce and agreed to give our marriage another shot. We also started going to marriage counseling while living apart, hoping that it would help us work through our issues. For a time, it seemed that we were on the right path. My parents moved in to help care for the girls while Angela was living away, and we attended counseling sessions weekly. Briefly, things appeared to improve. I was in contact with her therapist, who informed me that Angela was facing postpartum depression but was making progress. One of the symptoms of her condition was anger management issues, which were new to her. The incident when she shoved me acted as a wake-up call for both of us. This arrangement lasted for almost a year, and around 6 months into it, I allowed her to visit our daughters under my supervision. Slowly, I began to see glimpses of her old self returning, which brought me relief. I felt hopeful that our situation might be improving at last. It seemed like our situation was finally getting better. I thought we might actually find a way to make things work between us. However, everything changed suddenly when she stopped attending our counseling sessions. She didn't provide any explanation for her absence, and as days turned into weeks, she also stopped responding to my messages. Despite this silence, I was aware that she was making progress with her therapist, who kept me informed about her journey. This situation left me confused and frustrated. I tried to reach out to her multiple times, but she brushed me off, insisting that she needed some time to herself. After nearly 3 months of her avoiding me, I made the decision to visit her at her parents' house. I had avoided doing this earlier because her parents were not fond of me. They blamed me for her struggles, believing I was the one who had pushed her over the edge, causing her to act out in ways they couldn't understand. Angela had suggested that it would be better for me not to visit while she was living with them, as it would only lead to unnecessary drama, something we clearly didn't need. However, her recent behavior made me feel compelled to break that rule and see her in person. When I arrived at her parents' house, I expected to find Angela there, but she was nowhere to be seen. I asked her parents where she was, but they refused to tell me anything and slammed the door in my face. Their reaction felt deliberate, and I sensed they were enjoying my distress. Growing increasingly anxious, I decided to call Angela while standing outside. I tried reaching her several times, but she didn't answer. My worry escalated, so I resorted to sneaking around to the backyard, hoping to find her. I knew her parents usually left the kitchen door unlocked, but to my surprise, I didn't need to go that far. Through a glimpse, I saw Angela sitting on the swing in her backyard. Unfortunately, she had her back to me, and more troubling was the fact that she was making out with a man I did not recognize. That moment is etched in my memory, a painful image that I cannot shake even now. The man she was with turned around as soon as he saw me, and by the time Angela noticed, I had already begun to walk back to my car. She hurried after me, trying to stop me, but I was too stunned to listen to what she was saying. When she attempted to grab me, I shook her off and told her not to touch me. In shocked silence, I returned to my car and drove home. Once I was back, I blocked her on all platforms, ensuring she wouldn't be able to explain anything to me. I also informed my parents about what had just happened and asked them to find a lawyer for me. I felt like my world had crumbled. After that, I didn't see Angela or hear from her until we had to meet with a court-appointed mediator for our divorce settlement. By that point, I had emotionally shut down. I was just going through the motions for the sake of our daughter. When I learned that Angela was terminating her parental rights, it felt surreal. She had decided she no longer wanted to be with us, her heart was now with the man I had seen her with, let's call him Sean. He was a childhood friend of hers. Although they had lost touch after high school, they reconnected when she returned to her parents' house. It turned out she had fallen in love with him, and her parents supported this new relationship, which explained why they had been so open about her meeting up with him in their backyard. This revelation shattered any hope I had left, marking the end of our life together as I had known it. Despite being a married woman with 2 children, Angela's family had always hoped she would end up with Sean. They seemed pleased that Angela was finally prioritizing her own happiness, as if she had ever been capable of doing anything other than that. The divorce process was long and challenging. Even though she had cheated on me, Angela still wanted to qualify for alimony. It took substantial time, but my lawyer and I worked hard to ensure that she did not receive anything in the divorce, as I believed that everything rightfully belonged to me. For a long time, I had been the one paying for everything while she spent her days watching television at home. 5 years have passed since the divorce was finalized, and I am relieved that we succeeded in our goal of ensuring she walked away with nothing. The months I spent dealing with the divorce were some of the toughest of my life. However, I understood that I could not let myself break down because I was responsible for my daughter, who had no one else but me. My parents were incredibly supportive during this time, and I am forever grateful for their presence while I balanced work and taking care of my kids. Looking back, I realize that although the divorce felt like the worst thing that could have happened to me at the time, I am now thankful for it. I believe that I would not be in the place I am today if I had not made the decision to leave Angela. Life has treated me well since then, and I find myself in a much better situation in every aspect. We have moved into a bigger house, as my income has improved, allowing me to focus my finances solely on myself and my daughters. My parents live nearby and visit us regularly, and I have friends who care about both me and my girls. Their happiness means everything to me, and I feel immense gratitude to the universe for how well things are going. That was my life until Angela unexpectedly showed up a few days ago. The kids were at school, and I was about to leave for work when the doorbell rang. To my surprise, there stood Angela with a young boy beside her, likely her son, who looked to be around 3 or 4 years old. I was taken aback by her sudden appearance at my doorstep. Before I could fully process the situation, she began crying and explained that she was there to apologize and make things right. Angela insisted that she was ready to be a family again and wanted to give our marriage another chance. I was stunned. After all these years, she was asking to rekindle a relationship that had been destroyed by her actions. Without hesitation, I decided to shut the door and turn her away. I firmly told her that this was no longer her family. I had stopped being her husband the day she chose to cheat on me with Sean. The divorce was merely a legal formality at that point. Angela had given up custody of our daughter, which meant she had lost any claim to refer to us as her family. After stating those words, I closed the door and told her to leave my property. I was angry and wanted to express my feelings, but I held back because of the little boy who was with her. I could hear her crying for a few minutes outside my door after I shut it. However, I resolved to ignore her and waited until I was sure the coast was clear before heading off to work. I tried hard not to dwell on the incident, as I knew that thinking about it might weaken my resolve, and I couldn't afford that. I almost succeeded in pushing the memory of Angela's visit out of my mind, but upon returning home from work, I received a call from my parents. They demanded to know why I had turned her away. Angela had reached out to them after I closed the door, and she was devastated. My parents were concerned and wanted an explanation for my actions. The unexpected drama reignited emotions I had thought were long buried, forcing me to confront the impact of Angela's re-emergence in my life. She had been incredibly devastated to learn that my parents were the ones who had given her my new address. They suggested that she visit me since she was in the process of getting divorced from Sean. My parents believed this was her opportunity to make things right between us. Angela had reached out to them about a month ago, and the plans for her visit had been in the works for quite some time. My parents felt it was essential for me to think about my children, especially since my daughters needed their mother. They firmly believed that there was no better mother for them than Angela. Because of this, they decided she deserved another chance and shared my address with her, even telling her exactly what to say to me. When I found out about this, I became really angry. I felt it was not their decision to forgive her on my behalf and to allow her back into my life without asking me if I would be okay with it first. I thought it could have ended badly, especially if the kids had been at home during her visit. I felt it was reckless of my parents to intervene this way. When I confronted them and expressed my frustrations, they refused to acknowledge that they had made a mistake. Their view was that they had helped me tremendously during my divorce by taking care of the kids, and even now, they occasionally looked after them. They believed they had the right to decide what was best for my children, just as I did, and I couldn't take that away from them. In my opinion, it was ridiculous for them to think that way. At the end of the day, my daughters were my responsibility, not theirs. While I deeply respected my parents for all they had done for me during such a difficult time, I felt strongly that it was not their place to reintroduce Angela into my life. When we got into a heated argument, they insisted that I was being unreasonable and selfish for not allowing Angela a second chance. They told me they had done their homework and were convinced she was a changed woman who deserved to be part of my daughters' lives. Even when I reminded them that Angela had signed away her parental rights, they reacted by saying it was insulting to think they would put my daughters or me in danger. They accused me of ruining their lives by being too stubborn to see that my kids needed their mother. Days passed, and I still didn't feel like I was in the wrong. I thought long and hard about the situation and did not believe I was selfish for not wanting to give my ex-wife another chance at being a mother. About a week has gone by since Angela unexpectedly showed up at my door with her son, and I recently discovered the unsettling truth about her ongoing relationship with my parents. This revelation is so disturbing that I find it hard to even figure out how to process it. I am shocked at how all of them seem to have betrayed me without a second thought. It turns out that not only did my parents give Angela my new address, but they had also been in contact with her all along. After my divorce, I had cut Angela out of my life completely, believing that was the necessary path for my family. But my parents had not done the same. They maintained a connection with her, thinking that she would eventually come around. They didn't communicate often, only once a month, perhaps, but that was enough to make me feel betrayed. My parents informed me that Sean had forced Angela to sign away her rights as a mother in the divorce settlement. He had given her a harsh ultimatum: she could either abandon her family to build a new life with him or choose to keep in touch with her children and fight for custody, which would mean leaving him behind. According to my parents, it had been a hard decision for her, but she ultimately chose to go with Sean, leaving her family behind. They said that soon after I filed for divorce, Angela reached out to them. She told them about her difficult situation and asked for their assistance, expressing a desire to remain in contact with her kids. Privately, she had conveyed to them that she felt trapped by both Sean and me. She felt as if there was no way to see her children, as I was fighting for full custody with limited visitation rights, while Sean was pressuring her to cut ties completely with her kids. Sean had given her clear instructions: she needed to abandon her children completely. Even if she decided to fight for custody and go up against Sean, the possibility of her winning even partial custody was very low due to the situation surrounding our divorce. Her past struggles with controlling her temper only made the odds slimmer. Therefore, putting in the effort and resources to fight for custody seemed pointless to her. There was a significant risk that she might end up losing both Sean and the chance to see our daughters if she chose to fight. This was all before my parents entered the picture. She had a private meeting with them where she practically pleaded for them to help her stay connected with her daughters. She asked them to act as a bridge between her and the girls. Angela understood that once she signed away her parental rights, she would have no visitation rights or any form of supervision. But my parents still had those rights, and they intended to exploit that situation to their advantage. They successfully kept this from me for a long time, secretly allowing Angela to meet with our daughters. They were moved by Angela's plight and could not morally justify separating a mother from her children, even if it meant turning against their own son. They told me that whenever I dropped off our kids at their house, they would invite Angela over to spend time with them. My daughters never let me know they were meeting their mother. My parents bribed them with toys and candy to keep quiet. Whenever I would ask the girls about their time at their grandparents' home, they would tell me they played games with my parents and their friend. I assumed they were referring to my parents' actual friends, whom I knew well. In reality, that was merely the name my parents instructed the girls to use for Angela, in case I asked them about their day. I couldn't believe that my daughters had been lying to me, but I forgave them because I recognized they were just kids. Additionally, it was clear that Angela and my parents had manipulated them, creating an atmosphere of intimidation that pushed them to stay silent about the secret meetings. Upon discovering the truth from my parents, I confronted my daughters, asking if they had indeed been meeting their mother without my knowledge. They broke down in tears, expressing that they were too afraid to tell me because they were convinced they would face punishment from God if they did. It was evident that Angela and my parents had filled their heads with fear regarding the consequences of being honest with me, which explained their secrecy and reluctance to share details. I began to feel like a terrible father for never directly asking my daughters which friends they were spending time with at their grandparents' house. It could have easily been someone more dangerous than Angela, and I would have been none the wiser. Now, I was resolved to put an end to this situation. I planned to get a restraining order against all of them. I had already gathered written proof of the deception, as my parents had sent me an email confessing everything a few days after our argument. They thought the email would help me see how desperate Angela was to stay connected to her daughters while not losing her supposed true love. Instead, it made me realize that everyone involved was a deceitful liar, and I could no longer trust anyone. Ironically, Angela had willingly signed away her parental rights, and she was now meeting our children in secret as if it were an act of crime. This was all because Sean didn't want her to have any contact with her former family, despite being her one true love. Now, they were facing their own divorce, rendering everything she had done meaningless. They also had a son together, but my parents informed me that Sean no longer wanted any part of her life or their child because he had received a job offer and was planning to move away in a few months. Angela had recently started working again, and their son had just begun kindergarten, so she was reluctant to move. Angela had no intention of moving with Sean, and this disagreement had caused ongoing conflict between them for quite some time. Their arguments escalated over the months, reaching a breaking point 3 months ago. That's when Sean made the decisive statement that he was finished with their relationship. He had accepted a job offer that required him to relocate, and he expressed that he no longer wanted to be a family man. Sean believed that staying would mean sacrificing his own dreams and happiness solely to please Angela, and he was not willing to make that sacrifice any longer. While some might see this situation as a reason to feel sympathy for Angela, it only made me feel a sense of justice. I took significant steps to protect myself and my daughters. After consulting with my lawyer, I had filed for restraining orders against Angela and my parents. We had a serious conversation about everything that had been happening, and I made it clear to my daughters that they would no longer be seeing their grandparents or their mother. For now, they seemed to accept this decision, but I knew that emotional support would be crucial. We planned to attend therapy sessions to help us navigate the challenges ahead, especially since the situation had likely been tough on them for the past 5 years. I was determined to bring this chapter of our lives to an end. In a follow-up update, I expressed my gratitude for the concern and support from others. Many individuals sent kind messages and blessings to my daughters. I informed everyone that both my parents and Angela had been served with restraining orders and were required to appear in court soon. I had cut off all communication with them, blocking them on every social media platform. I also instructed my friends to refrain from talking to them to prevent any possible contact. To enhance our safety, I increased security measures around our home and started working from home. I communicated with my daughter's school authorities about our situation. Initially, I thought it best to keep them home for a few days, but I didn't want their education to suffer because of Angela and my parents. The teachers were informed to monitor the situation closely and ensure that only I could pick them up after school. I was doing everything I could to keep them safe, knowing that Angela and my parents might try to reach us. In a brief third update, I shared the good news that we had successfully obtained the restraining order. For the next 5 years, Angela and my parents would be legally obligated to keep their distance from my daughters and me. This development was a relief, but I remained cautious. I intended to maintain all security measures for the foreseeable future because the last time I saw them, they appeared very angry, and I wanted to avoid any potential risks. My daughters and I began attending regular family counseling sessions, and I felt optimistic about the progress we would make over the next few months. We had already made some significant strides. My primary focus was ensuring my daughter's happiness, and I hoped for continued support from those around us as we moved forward together.